I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Treviene Harris of the American Council of Learned Societies recently and asked her about her career preparation. Here are some of the things she had to say. Treviene, can you tell me more about your career preparation and how your PhD helped you prepare for your current position?
Yeah, sure. So I started my PhD program, my master's program, sorry, in 2011 in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. So during my master's program, it was not unusual to hear my professors or mentors talk about, the unavailability or the lack of availability of academic jobs and kind of implying along those lines to think about, where else you could be. So by the time I started my PhD program, I was already kind of conditioned to be thinking more broadly. And that led me throughout my PhD program to pursue things like career workshops, all-tac job talks, alumni talks, be more active in student government, anything that would put me in contact with like the broader community outside of my department. That was how I kind of shaped my career or professional development curiosity in the doctoral program. And I came across administrators who also had PhDs. I would go and talk to these people, how did you get where you are? Why did you not go to an academic job? And so on and so forth. I just kind of started building these relationships. And at one point, Pitt had a public humanities semester-long seminar. And that seminar exposed me to different types of jobs. So we went to like cultural centers, libraries, museums, and we got a chance to understand like how some of the knowledge that we're acquiring as as humanities PhDs can support these other things. So it kind of really helped me to think, started me thinking about where else I might be legible as someone with a PhD, trying to do something that was not in the academic field. In summer of 2019, I think one of the smaller MLA conventions was here in Pittsburgh, and they sent out an email and they mentioned that the MLA Connected Academics was having a workshop at the meeting, and I signed up and I went there and I met Brian DeGracia. That was an opportunity to actually meet people who were working on preparing students for different careers. And at that same conference, I came in contact with Stacey Hartman. At the time, she was at CUNY, the public lab there. And they had a little like a poster section, and she talked about the work that she did at MLA convention. At the MLA convention, they have a pro seminar for the duration of the convention for like about 3 or 4 days around career exploration and professional development. So I applied there and I got through. And I went there. I met Chris Goldie. Chris is very well known in the field of professional development for doctoral students. And so it was a program for a couple of days where it was very hands-on. It was very much about self-assessment, finding out what my strengths are, finding out what motivates me, and then trying to find useful ways to map different careers into what it is you enjoy doing or what it is you enjoy about what you're developing in like holistic PhD study, not just as a subject matter expert. And this was really, really edifying for me. It crystallized a lot for me. Just the idea of what I was trying to do independently, trying to gather all this information and ask all these questions. There are people who actually do this for a job and support students in doing this. And I harnessed all the resources that they gave me, different handouts, how to convert your CV to a resume, how to read a non-academic job ad, how to respond to it in different ways. I took all of that back with me and just tried to practice stuff. I would apply for jobs at a museum and stuff like that. Never got any jobs. But what am I risking? So learning and developing a skill about writing and talking about myself, not as an academic, but as a professional in these other spaces. Having come back from the conference, I started to look around my institution for non-teaching assistantships, trying to get ways to get the practical experience that, I think could make me distinct. At one of the job talks I had attended on campus way before, I met a Pitt PhD graduate. Her name is Katie Walsh. She was at the Learning Center at CMU. But after the talk, I went up to her and I was like, your job sounds so amazing. How did you get this job? And she was like, well, when I was a PhD candidate, I got a experience teaching fellowship at the teaching center. And I was like, we have a teaching center and they offer fellowships. And she was like, yeah, here's somebody you can talk to, and here's what I did, and so on. And, I made that, established that connection with Katie, and she's someone I still go back and forth with. And so I recalled the recommendation that Katie made, and I applied to be an experienced teaching fellow at the Center for Teaching and Learning. And it might seem counterintuitive that while I'm looking for non-teaching opportunities, I end up at the teaching center, but it was also a chance to get kind of plugged in to the administrative apparatus of the university and meet people who are external to like the departments, right? And in that role, I learned a lot. I supported graduate students' pedagogical training. So I worked with graduate students. I would do things like teaching observations and give them feedback on their classes. I would do one-on-one peer counseling. I would create and facilitate workshops. I would work with faculty members too on things like lesson plan development and so on. And so I'm really building up this dossier of I want to think about as communications expertise and things that we don't use the language in the academic departments, but things like strategic planning, things like assessment, content delivery. These are words and things that I'm learning about how the administrative part of the university works. After we're kind of coming out of COVID, and I noticed that there were a lot of universities posting jobs for professional development focused on doctoral students. And my thinking is after the hit that the academic job market took again in 2020, a lot of universities became invested in trying to prepare their students for going elsewhere, right? The job boards were flush with these kinds of jobs about professional development for doctoral students, trying to get them to think about non-academic careers. When I had started at the teaching center, my mentor there, Joel Brady, who was just like a really, really great, supportive, encouraging mentor. Starting my role as the experienced teaching fellow, he said, this opportunity is a launching pad into so many other things. And I want you to think as you move through the fellowship, which was 2 years, think really seriously about how you can take this experience and do something like different with it if you're so inclined. One of those jobs was created at the University of Pittsburgh in the Office of the Provost for Graduate Studies. And when that job came up, it seemed to me that everything he was asking for or was looking for was things that I had encountered in my independent search. So it was a part of my lived experience trying to think about how to gather resources for grad students, how to get grad students to start thinking about what it is they're capable of doing outside of the academic field, creating workshops, facilitating career exploration opportunities, and so on. It's basically like the MLA Pro seminar expanded, right? Doing this full-time for the university. And I talked to Joel Brady, who was my mentor, and Mike Bridges, who was the executive director of the teaching center at the time. I think I can do this job. Can you support me in you've seen me work for like a year and a half. You know what it is I can do, even if I don't know how to articulate it. Can you help me to put together an application? And they both did. I interviewed and I was successful for that job. In the time between the teaching center and applying for this job, I also got the opportunity to work with the ACLS as a research consultant on the design workshop for our new academy, which was their big project at the time, which I think of as kind of a precursor to the Doctoral Futures program now, where they were working with, at the time it was 6 universities across the nation, different tiers of universities, on things like curriculum reform, on things like professional development. And I had the opportunity to work closely with Joy Connolly and James Schulman, and like provosts and deans and directors from all these different institutions across the nation on thinking about how to reform doctoral study. And I worked on and off with ACLS for I think 2.5 years, in addition to the design workshop for our new academy. It's difficult to overstate how this kind of experience is just extraordinary for a grad student. And I basically took it all in, and I continued to keep these lines of communication open. I would email people, I'd email Chris, and I'm looking at this certificate. Do you think it makes sense? I'd email Stacy, I'm applying for this job. Can you give me some feedback on my letter? To the extent that Stacy Hartman and Joy Connolly became 2 of my referees for my job at Pitt. I think I wanted to do the job at Pitt was focused on doctoral students broadly across the university. And I think I wanted to focus on humanities PhDs more because I find that the conversation around preparing PhD humanities for different careers, like someone like myself, is not as robust as it is in STEM fields. And I just kept checking with the ACLS on their job board to see when something opened up, and a job opened up. I was really attracted to the project. It kind of jived with a lot of things I've done for ACLS before and my personal values and interests. Having the experience there at ACLS, having the experience in higher ed at a big R1 university, I imagine kind of elevated my application. I went and I interviewed and I got the job. In thinking specifically about what in my PhD training prepared me for this job, my ability to do research, right, and distill large swaths of information for non-specialist audiences. My work at a teaching center absolutely prepared me for this job. I'm not sure if it's part of my PhD training per se as a subject matter expert, but it was a part of my PhD experience. So that really helped me as well. PhD students just going through the process are really, really familiar with the administrative aspect of it more than they know. And I think the experiential learning I got from my time at ACLS and my time at the teaching center, and like having the language to talk about my skill sets in different ways, as opposed to I research and teach. I plan, I organize, I assess. There are all these other things I do. And so while it was not a part of my degree in Caribbean studies, it was a part of my PhD experience and my holistic PhD training, all the things I kind of connected to during that time. And so I think that is how I became equipped to do the job I'm doing right now, and just basic overall exhibiting curiosity, which I think is what animates us as researchers, right? Why is this thing the way it is? Becoming a systems thinker and thinking about how things are interconnected in really particular ways, having a sense of like power dynamics, power play, historical frameworks, and so on that are all brought to bear on these projects, on the project I'm working on. Not explicitly in the ways that you would think about framing like our humanistic research project, but these are skills that are there kind of inert. If you look at a job call, for example, and look at what they're asking for, like, I've done all of these things, but also attaching that to concrete experience. Here is a project I worked on with a national organization, and I have the language to describe the work that I did that might be different, that is different from how I talk about my academic self.